Okay, time for my dream anime number 2. What, y'all thought I only have one dream? You know, I sleep every night. I come up with lots of different, images in my head. So alright, here's my dream anime number 2. It's basically like Psycho-Pass by way of Precure. So it takes place in a dystopian sci-fi world, but one that's very like bright and poppy. It's all like pinks and purples, and basically just think vaporwave aesthetic. Like, this is just going to be a show using the aesthetic of vaporwave. All those clips of like Sailor Moon and shit that have like all the color saturation and all the pinks and purples brought out. It's going to be a show that just looks like that all the time. And with character designs probably by, oh god, I'm forgetting his name. Where's my art book? God damn it. I'll remember. The guy who did Heartcatch, Precure, and Ojamajo Doremi, and Kashern-Sin's... Why the fuck can't I remember his name right now? It doesn't matter. Look him up. And My Hero Academia for the anime version. That guy. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway... It's a show that's very cutesy aesthetic, but it's in a sort of a dystopian, but presented more as a utopian society, where everything's run by AI that makes all the decisions for you. Actual AI, not brains in jars. And it's about this magical girl squad who sort of works for the government and stops criminals. Now, this is going to be a cutesy, fun show. Even though the messages will get pretty heavy, it's going to be a show that would be accessible for all ages. So the kinds of crimes being committed are not necessarily violent. It's more like people expressing displeasure, or people just not being happy, people having sort of antisocial tendencies. These magical girls will come in and like help those people through their problems and help them to fit in with this utopian society. So on the surface level, this seems like it's just kind of cute and innocent, but, on the level of we're basically having magical girls preventing thought crime, it's also terrifying. So, depending on how old you are, this show will have a different kind of tone to it. Now, at first, it'll be sort of like Psycho-Pass, mostly about world building and, introducing us to the way that systems work in this world. Lots of fun little sci-fi concepts. It'll probably be like a 26-episode series. It could probably be done in 13 if you couldn't do it in, like, if you couldn't get 26 or even 22 episodes. But we'll count on it being like 22. So it starts off with world building, character development, getting us into, introducing us to these magical girls, sort of how they, feel about the world they're in and their jobs and everything, and exploring that. Now, after a few episodes, we'll introduce a character who's our Makishima of this show. But in a different way. This guy disagrees with the system and has issues with it, but he is going around subverting the system in small ways without actually breaking any of its rules. The way this guy operates is that he finds loopholes in the way the system operates and finds little tricks to subvert it and spread his message of subversion, like to do this openly, to find ways to show people the sort of flaws in the system without ever actually breaking any of the system's rules. So the magical girls can't do anything about it. Eventually what happens is the system becomes concerned about this, about the sort of thought germ that this guy is spreading through society, that there might be something wrong with the system in place. And so, because he hasn't done anything wrong, the system starts trying to make him do something wrong, to trick him. They're trying to use the girls to do this, to make him screw up. And the girls start to realize, hey, hold on, this goes against what we're pretty sure we're all about, So it becomes a sort of conflict of now the system is questionable, now that it's trying to sort of force its rule, or to change the rules maybe, trying to adjust itself so that it can get rid of this guy, and the girls start realizing, well, this isn't right, So what eventually happens is that there's sort of a divide in ideology among the girls. Maybe one of them will side with the system, maybe the others will continue to fight against it, maybe someone leaves the system upon this realization. But eventually what will happen is this guy will start up a full-blown rebellion, and he'll get enough people on his side that they start to sort of overthrow the system. The system can't control them because there's too many people who have now had this thought germ spread to them that there's something wrong with the system. So what the system has to do is to completely change the rules in favor of these people. Because if they don't, these people are going to overthrow it. They end up having enough power, they can take down the system. And so the system has to adhere to their demands. It's these people who see themselves as marginalized within the system, these people who, want it to be different for their sake because they feel like they're not getting what they want. So the system has to change to suit those people. And at first this seems like maybe it's not so bad. All these marginalized individuals now get to, to live in the society that they want. But the way that the rules change end up affecting a different group of people. So now instead of, no one is suffering under the system, it's just a different group who's suffering under the system. And since the initial group has just, taken over, gotten what they wanted, and these were angry, passionate people who really felt, downtrodden by the system for years, for their whole lives, this new group of people, it hits them like a wrecking ball. They've never been through this before. They've never had the experience of being, the lesser members of society. And, the guy who's now in charge understands this all too well. So the magical girls are like, fuck, what about these people now? Like, now we're worried about them and their problems. And sort of what they realize is that in any system, in any culture, there's going to be people who are not satisfied with the culture. If you word it one way, it's going to affect one people, and if you word it another way, it's going to affect the other people. So what they do is they eventually say, well, you know what? We're disillusioned with the society, with the way this all works. We're going to take our people, and we're going to leave. So they go, they take these people, and they start a new society somewhere else. And they're thinking, well, we've done it. We've saved the day, we've gone off, and they start up a new society, and at first everyone's excited about it. Everyone's like, yeah, we're going to build our own place. It's going to be better than that place ever was. We're going to have our own rules. Everyone's going to be happy. We're going to be self-sufficient. It's going to be great. So they go off and they build their own city somewhere out in the world. But as time goes on, at first everyone's excited, so they're really energetic about it, and they're really into this idea of building their own society. But once it comes to the point where they've built up some stuff, and they start to realize they need their own rules, they need their own systems in place, and well, some of the people aren't happy with the new systems that they're putting in place. And this regime ends up being even sort of worse than the one before, where they have to work even harder because they don't have the force, they don't have a government that has a lot of force with which to take, the rules into their own hands. They're kind of fucked. So it's just whoever is the loudest and whoever has the most supporters is the one who gets to rule the society. And we end up with, once again, a group of people who are like, well, shit, this is a bigger mess than the one we just left. And at this point, a couple of years have passed. There's some young people who, were sort of dragged along into the social movement, but now that they've grown up a little bit, they're like, fuck this, let's go back to the city. So all these people go back to the city, only to realize that now the regime has changed again back in the city. It's different even than it was before, and they're seen as refugees now. And so they're treated as lesser citizens from this city that they originally came from, but now that they're back, a lot of them want to stick around anyways because it's still nonetheless better than that shitty society they created out there before. All the while, these magical girls are just kind of along for the ride, trying to do right, trying to make things right, trying to help those, in need. And in the midst of all this, surely one of these magical girls will have gone out, and just lives alone somewhere and has an okay life just being a fucking farmer, fuck society, fuck all of it. I'm just out here by myself. But it doesn't work for everybody. A lot of people, they need those things that only a society can give. And, if you live out by yourself, you die alone in the middle of nowhere. So, the whole point of this is basically to explore the way that society never works for everybody. As long as you build a society, there's always going to be someone who's not happy with the way it's run. And, the only way out of it is to live completely alone, which, you're only going to be happy with if you're the kind of person who can actually live that way. So that's what this is about exploring, but it's all done with a very chipper sort of tone to it. It's never just dark and violent, like an Urobuchi Gen thing would be. It's more in that vein of like a Kemono no Soja 18 or something, something that is, accessible to younger audiences, but is deep and has deeper meanings and is, explores a deeper context about society. And I don't know how this could end satisfyingly. I don't know if there is a happy ending to this other than, each magical girl who by this point, let's say there were 4 of them in the beginning. At this point, each one of them has stopped off somewhere else on the ride. Each one of them is now in a different part of society. You might have the one who's still with the original regime. You've got one who's still with the people who left, to go form their own village. You've got one who's out on her own and one who's with the refugees. And, each of them has had this other experience of what society could bring them to. So, each one will sort of resolve their character arc in that way. And, I don't know, I guess it's ultimately pretty depressing. Unless it's, you can spin anything to not be that hard. Just pour a little, taking a little sugar with your medicine there, which is the cutesy magical girl element of this. But yeah, ideally character designs by, his name's still slipping my mind, by him, because he can do both, and he would also be the art director, because he could do both cutesy magical girl stuff and dystopian, settings and shit like he does in Concrete Sins, which has some of the best background art of all time. He also did the backgrounds for Mushishi. So he can do like gorgeously detailed backgrounds, but we'd have him working with this vaporwave aesthetic, sort of taking the colors, the bright palettes he uses in Hardcatch, Precure and stuff, but with a more detailed approach and more... What's the word I'm looking for? Aesthetic. A-E-S-T, the spelled out version of aesthetic. And, okay. Music. I don't really know what the music would be like in this. I would assume it would be like vaporwave music. So we'll do like a future funk soundtrack for this show. And we'll have it animated by probably Production IG, because they can do a serious sci-fi story. I think they could do pretty much any aesthetic, but they'll do it justice. If not them, maybe fuck it, we'll stick with Production IG. This is my dream anime, okay? I get to make my own demands here. The director, I don't know who would direct this. The guy who did Psycho Pass, I can't see him doing like a cutesy, cute girls show. I don't know. I don't know how important the direction of this would be. It would not so much be about like experimental visuals as just this consistent visual tone. Actually, a good comparison visually would be Concrete Revolutio. That color scheme is kind of what I'm thinking of here. In fact, the whole tone of that show. So maybe whoever directed Concrete Revolutio can come aboard this. But Sho Aikawa does not get to write it because he's a fucking insane person. And, I'm kind of assuming I'm writing these dream anime, I guess, since they're my concepts. I don't think anyone else is going to write these the way that I'm envisioning them unless I, sat down at a meeting with a professional and had, someone really good and, explained it all to them in detail. So, yeah, I don't know about the writer, but well, maybe Bones could do it. Maybe the Concrete Revolutio team could do it, because they definitely have the right aesthetic down. And that's already a show with a fucking bizarre out there plot. But this one would just be a little bit more cutesy and a little bit more family friendly than Concrete Revolutio. Anyway, I hope you enjoy that idea.